long rest stop at Spooktober 2024, it's about time we hit the road again, kids. And it's time to get back in that boat and return to Mackinac Island, because we've only just scratched the surface. So join me again on part 2 of our Haunted United States special edition, Into the Haunts of Mackinac. With the backdrop of Mackinac Island being a literal battlefield responsible for the loss of countless lives, it's of little surprise that many travelers and residents of the island have stories to tell of odd and sometimes terrifying occurrences on and around Fort Mackinac. Also unsurprising is that the fort is regarded as one of the most active hotspots on the whole island, although obtaining evidence can be a little challenging, since park management rarely grants ghost investigation teams access to the fort. They state this is because they want people to come to the fort to experience it as a historic step back in time, and further, so as to not disturb the spirits who linger on the island, either by choice or unfinished business. One of the ghosts most commonly discussed in relation to Fort Mackinac is Private James Brown, as it is believed he likes to make his presence known in several locations throughout the fort. Back in its active days, a fight would break out between the young Private Brown and a corporal by the name of Hugh Flynn in the fort mess hall. This fight would end in tragedy when Brown would shoot Flynn in the neck with a flintlock rifle. Brown was just coming off guard duty and had not yet returned his weapon for the night. The why behind the shooting has been in debate ever since. Some believe it was an accident, and that static electricity caused the rifle to go off. However, not everyone believes this accidental shooting theory. It was well known at the time that Brown and Flynn were not on the friendliest of terms, and even if the gun had gone off on accident, it was still pointed directly at Flynn. Some would argue that hardly sounds like an accident. Private Brown's crime was one of the original reasons the gallows were built in the fort, and while several of his comrades would try to mutiny in an attempt to free him, with an appeal for pardon going so far as to reach the desk of the president, the pardon would never come, and James Brown was hung for the murder of Hugh Flynn. Today it is believed Private Brown is still hanging around the former mess hall turned restroom, causing chaos for any men attempting to enter. Men have reported the stall doors being ripped open, but with no one on the other side of the door when it comes flying open. The water faucets will turn on by themselves, and the censored paper towel dispensers that require hand movement to activate will do so with no one near it. Seemingly harmless, albeit scary pranks. However, many people believe that Private Brown continues to haunt not just the fort bathroom, but the guardhouse as well. The guardhouse is one of the original 14 buildings on fort grounds, and was the only jail available on the island until 1828. And while many attribute some of the haunted activity to Private Brown causing a stir, as if in an attempt to find a stay of execution, others believe there is more than just one ghost to blame. Some have stated that they have felt cold spots in several areas of the jail, not just the guardhouse. Cold spots that occur seemingly at random, even on the hottest of summer days. Multiple people have photographed what they believe to be orbs, and when speculating who the entities might be, in addition to Private Brown, many believe it to be his fellow inmates, remaining to serve out their sentences. And while those spirits may be restricted to staying in the jail, Private Brown apparently is well known for making his rounds around the island. Many believe him to be the potential culprit behind one of the most widely known dark entities on the island, the Rifle Range Trail Ghost. The Rifle Range was the spot that hosted the portable gallows from which Private Brown was hung. People have reported a wide variety of experiences while walking the trail. Occurrences from sensing someone coming up behind them as they walk the trail, even hearing footsteps approaching. But when they turn back to look and scold this person for coming too close, no one is there. Others claim to have seen a full apparition on the trail dressed in full uniform, and when they approach, he disappears. Others still experience far more aggressive encounters with the trail spirit, stating when they come in contact with the entity, he grows agitated and throws rocks at them. And in some cases, women have reported to having their hair pulled by an unseen assailant, or to feeling as though they are being tripped. Some believe the rifle range ghost might be a far darker entity, but many do believe that this too is Private Brown, walking the trail and following the path of his former guard duties, maybe reliving that last day, hoping that he can somehow rewrite history and prevent his actions, which led to the tragic death of Corporal Hugh Flynn. And because of this, many also believe him to be the spirit often encountered along another portion of this guard duty trail, the North Sallyport entrance gate and wall. The North Sallyport is the original rear entrance to Fort Mackinac and was built shortly after the Americans first garrisoned the fort in 1796. The name Sallyport comes from a French term meaning to burst forth. The Sallyport entrance was an important piece of the soldiers' guard duties, as they were required to walk the wall on the inside gate and were often the first line of defense against any attempted intruders. Some believe that as penance for his crimes, Private Brown is still performing his guard duties, as many report to seeing a soldier in full uniform walking up and down the pathway just inside the fort walls, protecting the North Sallyport entrance for all eternity. But Private Brown and Corporal Flynn are just two of the numerous tragic tales of the soldiers who lived, served, and died in Fort Mackinac. Due to the enclosed quarters and the lack of medical advances at the time, many would contract fatal illnesses and would be sent to the fort hospital, never to return. Today, when visitors to Mackinac Island find themselves touring the fort hospital, they are most likely in for far more than they bargained for. Reportedly, the hospital is shrouded in a heavy cloud of what can only be described as a feeling of deep sadness. Visitors have claimed that as they walk through the hospital, they themselves are overcome with feelings of illness, and that the hospital is engulfed in the smell of rotting flesh, and that the air reeks of death. But the horrors don't end there, as upon reviewing the photos that they took during their tour, some guests have discovered an entity appearing, attempting to hide in the shadows of the shot. An entity that was not there at the time the photo was taken, and for some, it was not a full entity that would materialize in their photos. Horrifyingly enough, some tourists would instead find dismembered limbs randomly appearing in their vacation snapshots. Hardly the type of memories they were hoping to capture. For some of the soldiers that served at Fort Mackinac, the details of their deaths were not nearly as dramatic as the fate of Corporal Flynn and Private Brown, but they are no less tragic. With a war that seemed never ending, many soldiers would have their families stationed with them, and their families, sadly, would not be immune to the rampant illness and deaths that would plague Fort Mackinac. The soldiers, in addition to facing the death of their comrades in battle, also feared the loss of their young children, who were extremely susceptible to the many severely contagious diseases commonly running through the fort. And sadly, many of the young children and babies residing on the fort would succumb to these illnesses. And these tragic young children have apparently not found a way to move on, as numerous people have stated they have heard the crying of these young children struggling with their maladies. And they also claim to hear what they believe to be the weeping of these children's mothers, as they are well aware of the lack of a cure for their babies' illnesses, and knowing they must watch helplessly as their children suffer, and further knowing the inevitable outcome. Their babies will die. The tour staff of the soldiers' quarters have also reported to some ghostly activities happening. They claim furniture is moved around, and motion sensors go off during times when there are no visitors in the quarters. And due to the large amount of children that visit present-day Fort Mackinac with their parents, the staff has collected a small amount of toys to set out to occupy their attentions as their parents take in the history-rich tour, which quickly becomes boring for young minds. Each night, the staff will clean up the toys, before closing up. But every morning, in addition to all the lights being on, the toys are strewn about, the aftermath of the spiritual children's playtime, after hours. And with so many children tragically passing away, there's also an oppressive feeling of sadness and mourning, reported with many hearing the wails and sobbings of mourning mothers, reported not just within the soldiers' quarters, but the Fort Cemetery as well.
And now a word from our sponsors.
Look, Daddy, teacher says every time a bell rings, an angel gets his Vanitas.
That's right. That's right. Attaboy, Clarence.
With the spooky season officially at a close, giving way to the holiday season, there's never been a better time for the members of the Press Start family to check out longtime channel sponsor Vanitas. They truly have beautiful products and amazing customer service that I've been gushing about for nearly 2 years now. So if you're looking for that perfect gift for your family and friends, look no further than Vanitas. And as always, as an added incentive to all of the Press Start family members, Vanitas is offering their 10% discount on every order when you use my code PressStartMom at checkout. You'll get good quality products to share with your family and friends, and you will get their 100% commitment to excellence with their outstanding customer support team. So what are you waiting for? As you start your holiday shopping, make sure to add Vanitas.com to one of your holiday stops. And make sure you use code PressStartMom at checkout to get that 10% off. You can thank me later. Enjoy your holiday season, one and all. Let's get back to the video. The Fort Mackinac Post Cemetery is located near Skull Cave, about a mile north of the fort. The graveyard began seeing burials in the 1820s, and obviously a predominant amount of these bodies buried in the cemetery belonged to the soldiers who served during the Revolutionary War. But there are many, far too many children buried there as well. And for those visiting the cemetery wishing to pay their respects, they often claim to spot a woman in the back corner of the cemetery, lamenting over the loss of her child and her husband. Another rather infamous ghost story revolving around the Post Cemetery is that of John and Charlotte O'Brien. We are fortunate to, through their great-grandson Edward Nicholas, have a true and accurate picture of their lives through the love letters that they shared and was later uncovered by Edward. Their story, as told by the Mackinac Island State Historic Park's website, transpired with their move to Mackinac Island in the spring of 1842, when John accepted the position of U.S. Army chaplain of Fort Mackinac. The pair would consistently send letters back and forth, and they treasured the letters that they received from each other. They tied them up with string in tight little bundles, sometimes marked, "From my beloved to me." The letters tell a story of John's time at the fort, and has kept timeless the tale of their love. Edward compiled the letters into a book and stated, "Its words are John and Charlotte's more than my own. I have invented nothing, but only tried to arrange and interpret the writings that they left. Much is immediate and poignant. Much is unknown. But one thing was known. The pair truly and genuinely loved one another, so much so that Charlotte has been reportedly seen wandering the cemetery, searching for John, so they can continue their love story through eternity." Clearly, there are many tourist tales of hauntings within and around Fort Mackinac. But like was stated earlier in the video, obtaining actual evidence is nearly impossible due to the tight island restrictions forbidding access to the fort at night and the limitations of evidence gathering while in the midst of thousands of tourists in the daytime. Never mind the fact that when investigative teams do ask if they may be permitted access, the answer is very rarely a yes. But during one of the exceedingly rare investigations of Fort Mackinac, local ghost historian Todd Clements and future ghost tour manager Kim Cecil would make the most of their time. Their investigation began in the officers' quarters on the upper floor of one of the soldiers' barracks in what is believed to be the bedroom of 2 children. The group of investigators found themselves sitting on the floor amidst several different types of equipment, and initially things were fairly quiet. But at one point in the evening, Kim would abruptly jump up, shouting that someone was pulling on her hair. Todd would approach her with his flashlight raised, and would notice that one side of her hair was raised in the air, as though being tugged. The only problem was, there was no one physically near her. And while the group couldn't see anyone, they all claimed to have clearly heard something. Something that sounded eerily like a child's laughter. After their experiences that night, Kim would continue on as a guide with the Mackinac Island Walking Ghost Tour, eventually, as I said, becoming its manager, enveloping herself in the rich haunted history surrounding the island, retelling its many tragic tales on a nightly basis. And Todd found himself to be the ghost historian, compiling its many stories into a compilation book, The Haunts of Mackinac. If you have a question about a Mackinac Island ghost, he has your answer. But, kids, it's been a long day, and we've only discussed Fort Mackinac. We still have an entire island to explore. If you want to come along as we continue to explore this historic haunt, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. It's the easiest way to support the channel, and it's completely free. And if you like what we do and want to further support us, please consider becoming a member or joining us over on Patreon, like our top-tier patron Stop Propaganda. We love what we do, and we want to continue to make content you want to see. If you have a haunted location you want to see us delve into, then leave a comment below. But for now, it's time to check into our hotel for the night. I just hope that it, too, isn't haunted.